And then the very end, okay, there's gonna be spoilers all throughout this. Hi, I'm Case Spivey. Today I want to do a book review. It's been so long, but I finally read Demian by Hermann Hesse. And I really, really wanted to talk about it. Why am I reading an old book by a German writer, you might ask? Well, BTS. So I got vaguely interested in Demian because BTS based their entire Wings album off of the concepts of Demian. So it was already on my radar, and I was like, I probably should just like look into it and see, because the Wings album is fantastic. It's very like deep, metaphorical, nuanced. There's some angel and demon kind of concepts going on. I was fascinated by it, and I thought I've got to read the source material at some point. Another K-pop group I'm into did a song also about Demian, and I was like, all right, that's it. If K-pop is into this, I gotta know. I gotta know. I finally picked it up and read it. So Hermann Hesse is a German-Swiss writer who was writing around like World War I, World War II. I believe this one, the story takes place before World War I. And so the story of Demian is Max Demian, a friend, companion, almost like a guide that our main character, Sinclair, finds in his elementary days. Sort of like right when he needs support and a friend and someone to reach out to, that's when Demian comes along and is sort of his guide in like self-discovery. The story of Demian is a little bit of that kind of like philosophical circle jerk kind of thing that like would be very annoying. The other book that Hermann Hesse is probably maybe best well known for is Siddhartha, which I feel like I only knew about because people in college read it for like philosophy courses. So I was never that interested in that type of story. Like if you really don't like the ones where they're like really deep philosophical circle jerky, you might be a little bit skeptical as I was. And if you don't like sort of train of thought type of storytelling, you may not be into that as much. I don't know if this is more of a German style or not, but Demian is very much written as though someone is telling you a story where he might be like, oh, at this one point in my life I was doing this, but then this other thing, and like kind of working out his thoughts on the page a little bit, which might not be something that is very appealing to some readers. However, I totally like it. I think it read really well. And he's really good at going like deep into the concepts that he's talking about, because the whole idea of Demian is sort of this finding of a middle ground between society and religion that completely deals with the self. So the idea is that there are different worlds. So starting right off the bat, even as a child, Sinclair is really aware of the fact that he lives in almost a bubble. The world that he lives in is wealthy, it's clean, it's safe, it's innocent, it's playful, and he's aware that there's another world outside of that, the world of the servants, the world of the lower class, and he's saying dirty, there's violence, there's things that he's very much kept away from, and he's aware of those two things. And as they begin to meld, he almost sees the contradictions in the two and how they can't quite line up in his head, like they can't be part of the same place. They are two separate places. Demian then almost kind of gives him another option, and that's the option of think for yourself. This kid is brought up into Christianity and taught Christian stories, and Demian is just constantly like, but why do we think this way? But why is this like this? Especially with the story of like Cain and Abel. He's just like, but why? And just leaving that tiny breadcrumb in Sinclair's mind to think about. As Sinclair then grows, he encounters different situations. I will say, the story doesn't seem to know. I don't think the author maybe even knew or intended, or maybe he did. I don't know for sure. But like, Sinclair is very like not able to come to terms with the fact he's gay, okay? He constantly, anytime he's thinking about love, he'll be like, oh, I painted this thing, it's this perfect person to me, and the more I look at it, the more it looks like Demian. The more he's like fantasizing, the more it's like, wait a second. And the person I'm fantasizing about, Demian, is just like constantly coming back to Demian. And then at the end, Even though there's like, it's Damian's mother I'm in love with. Even at that point. And he's like, I'm going to manifest all of this so my love will come to me. Demian shows up and then he's like, oh yeah, my mom totally sent me. And I was like, skepticism is strong with me. At the very end, Demian kisses him. But he's like, that kiss was from my mom. And I was like, y'all. This kid is resistant to his gay awakening, but that is also, there's context for it. But the concept of the two worlds and the concept that everything, I should have marked on the page where the actual quote is, and I will put it up so that you can see the quote. Everything is about the self. And if something bothers you in another person, it's not a reflection of that person at all. Like if that person seems to be some way to you, it isn't a reflection on them at all, because nothing that isn't part of yourself would bother you. So if you're just like hating on somebody for something, it is only a reflection of you. And the entire concept of their religion, which revolves around this character of Abraxas, is sort of their god. A very famous quote, which BTS does use in the Wings album.
The bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is the world. Who would be born must first destroy a world. The bird flies to God. That God's name is Abraxas.
The bird is fighting its way out of the egg. The egg is the world. Whoever wishes to be born must destroy a world. The bird is flying to God. The god is named Abraxas. And then Abraxas from there, and that's like halfway through the story, he finally learns the name of this god, because before that he's very much struggling with this concept of the different worlds, struggling with the concept of self, struggling through things like alcoholism. But none of that is taken as a bad thing in this religion. Everything is just about the self. So like society may say you being a drunk is a bad thing, but is it a bad thing to you particularly? Are you hurting anyone? Are you doing what you believe fully is the right thing? And if you can commit 100% to believing in yourself, then that is godliness within their religion. Damian's example is that a man who's done terrible things his entire life and at the very last moment decides to convert to Christianity and is saved. And this is a story that they learned in their Bible class. And he's like, but that person isn't good. Like that's a bad thing to suddenly be like, oh, but I get to be saved because at the very last second I get to be a good person. He said a better person would commit and say that, no, all of these things I've done, they are me. And I'm not going to, abandon all of that is myself in order to get some quote unquote way into heaven. And I thought this was so fascinating. This was a really interesting concept with these extra added elements. He tells the story as though there's a fantasy element to it, that like Demian could almost be like a messenger from God, that his mother could almost be Abraxas. At the same time, very much grounded in this like philosophical circle jerk, college age kind of thing. When he's meeting people who then become these different teachers on his path, those people are almost sort of fantasy characters. Then he's not able to learn everything from them. Everything is just a step towards yourself. Like that you can't just be taught about this religion. You have to find your way there. You have to learn as much as you can from the different teachers. And that he has this opportunity to reach Abraxas, to break free of the egg, to break free of the world, fully realize his self. And I thought it was fascinating. It was a bit weird. And at the very end, it sort of twists and the war begins. And, like this life he was sort of reaching for, hoping for, now is very much, he talks about how everyone is now on the same focus. And almost as though that's both a good and bad thing, that these things can like coexist. The good and bad can coexist and not be evils. It was so fascinating, like really, really interesting, and just the tiniest short little read. As long as you can handle that kind of meandering storytelling method, I think it's a really interesting, deep concept. And I'm thrilled that after reading it, I rewatched BTS's Wings like series, like all of the things they put, because they put out a lot of content for it. Some people have just like strung the whole thing together in single videos you can sit and watch. Phenomenal. They used a lot. They used a ton of the concepts. They took their own most beautiful moment in life, universe, and characters and wove it into the world of Demian and the concepts of Demian. And it was like 10 out of 10. Beautiful. Really well done, like really deep thinky concept. And just this like this bridging of like the good and the bad, melding of the two worlds, the like societal differences. Like there's so much going on. There's so much that I really see why he was such a popular writer. I may read Siddhartha because I'm pretty sure that's more popular, just to see if this is this writing style that he's most known for. I think this is one of his earlier works, but just absolutely fascinating. One of my main takeaways from it was that concept that like everything has to do with itself. If you 150% believe what you're doing is the right thing, it's the right thing for you, and you commit to it fully, then you're not doing wrong. You're not morally bad. Like your moral stance doesn't have to do with these outside sources. Your moral stance is an internal thing. I think more people could definitely learn from that, but it's a fascinating concept. And I think this is something that just that idea of thinking for yourself and being accountable for all of your own actions, that there's no external accountability, that Abraxas is there for you only if you're completely committed and accountable for yourself, that it's entirely an internal religion and has nothing to do with others. Abraxas finds you when you're ready for him, and you don't then like seek out and teach others about him. Like there can be no church, and that's a whole like thing also. And it's fascinating. It's a really interesting take on religion and society and moral obligation, and it was really good. It's also a coming of age story. It's such a gay awakening. I would love to know, if you have read Demian, what you took away from it. There are a lot of really great quotes, and a lot of them that I like latched onto were the ones that BTS had used in their whole concept album, because obviously I was like, oh, I know that one. I'm gonna leave a link to that down below. If you are at all like, you've read Demian or you haven't read Demian, you're at all curious, I'll leave a link down below to like one of the videos that just has the whole thing all put together in case you wanted to see. If you're an American and you're not that into K-pop, the BTS you know or have heard of is not the BTS who was out here creating Wings. There's a very different image of them in the East and West. Or if you've only read the book, let me know your thoughts about it, because for such a small book, it was very fascinating. It was an easy read for me. Wasn't like super engaging story wise. You aren't just like pulled into the story. It's more like so fascinating I can't put it down. A little bit like a Murakami novel. If you're into that kind of style of Murakami where it has just that like faint fantasy elements, not to the extent of Murakami because that is very Japanese of him and this is a German Swiss author, but if you're into that kind of almost meandering style, a very thinky book, I think this would be one that would actually fascinate you. It was pretty good. But definitely let me know your thoughts on Demian down below. And if you've read Siddhartha and Demian, I would be fascinated to know if you think I would like Siddhartha based on my interpretation of Demian. Really interesting look at growing and changing and the way that elements of your childhood shape who you become and the way that you break free of those kind of influences and that expectation, the way that the choices you make for yourself influence things that the outside world cannot. That was another fascinating concept with the book, that like you can be like the worst person and many people can try to stop you from being that terrible person, but until you choose it for yourself, until you have that flip in the mind where you want to do something better, you can't. Like it won't change because there's no motivating factor there exactly. But things like love can definitely make those changes, and I thought it was such a cool concept. Really great book. Definitely recommend it, as long as those kind of storytelling elements wouldn't really just drive you crazy, because then it could be a book you would hate reading, and that's totally fair. Definitely leave a comment down below and like and subscribe and all that, and I will talk to you again very soon. Good luck to you. Good luck to all of us. Bye.